You're listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
Hallo, herzlich willkommen in Friedrichshafen.
Hello and welcome to the sixth and final part in the podcast series recorded at the 2008 Outdoor Trade Show at Friedrichshafen, Europe's largest gathering of manufacturers, distributors and designers, totally focused on the outdoors industry. If gear, technology and clothing is your thing, then this is the place to be to see what is being launched or worked on for 2009 release. Rose I and our European correspondent Roman Ackle spent several days meeting, greeting and chatting with old and new contacts to discover more about the products we'll all be seeing on the shelves in the very near future. In this podcast we look at Golite, a very popular US brand continuing to make a great impression in the European outdoor scene. Rose talks with Golite President Coup and asks one of the questions placed on the Outdoors Magic forum prior to our trip. Just what else do manufacturers like him carry in their rucksacks which they've had to pay for? I, on the other hand, speak with Andy Burgess, Vice President of Design for Golite, and look at their approach to rucksack design, materials and what factors they have to consider when looking at designing their products.
At Golite, as with any brand, the right place to start for backpack design is the brand essence, the brand philosophy. And at Golite, we prioritize excellent performance, long-term durability, and the minimal weight that we can achieve to execute those first two to our satisfaction. So we really start with the thought that people are going to use these backpacks for different end uses and tailor both the designs and the material selection to the specific end uses, whether it's a long trail, every 10 days you resupply, or it is just a weekend trip or simple day use. There are different design and performance criteria that we prioritize depending on those different end uses.
In the UK, probably we have a perception that a lot of the US outdoor user is aimed at doing the longer trails, and it's just from articles that you read and information that you're given. But is that a reasonable comment to make, or would you say there's a certain percentage that are day walkers and so on?
I think that by far the largest percentage of the market is the day use, the day walkers. However, there's more romance in describing the major accomplishment of doing a long trail. So I think there's more marketing around that than really the coverage of the day in, day out, either just short hike enjoyment or the training that goes into preparing for a long trail, which most people don't have the luxury of that much vacation time.
Yeah, well, it all comes down to time, doesn't it? Yeah, time and money, as they say. So what do you do then with practicalities? Do you go out into the marketplace and look at an area where there are a lot of people doing a particular activity and talk to them before you start the sort of design concept in your mind, or do you start with a sample and say, well, these are the key features I'd like this sample to have, and give it to that market and let them give you feedback on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We really start with the end use. We think about how people are using the products, and in fact, that's part of what we're doing here. We've the apparel team has been in the UK for 4 days. They were out in the Lake District on the trails. We're about to go do the same thing here in Germany. So really starting with the consumer and how they're using either our product or other product to achieve their goals. That's where we start, and then we tailor a product that meets Golite's criteria for the performance and durability and minimal weight from there.
As a complete aside, now you've actually said that about the apparel guys going to the Lake District, did they come back with any sort of revelations about sort of the conditions or how the equipment performed or didn't or whatever?
Well, it's certainly different than the environment that we have in Colorado, which is higher elevation, drier climate. So the majority of what they've told me anecdotally is just higher humidity, more moisture that you're dealing with, both from just what's in the air, as well as there are more frequent stream crossings and things like this that until you are in lots of different environments, you can't you can't say you've done all of your homework.
Yeah. It's easy to make an assumption, isn't it? So we've got a couple of packs in front of us here, and I want to talk a bit about design and functionality, and also very briefly about materials, because these materials we see through the marketplace or are changing on a sort of fairly regular basis. But at the moment, the material of the moment I think most people are aware of and hear about and have seen now creep into certain product ranges is Dyneema, or Dyneema-based material. So let's talk outwards from Dyneema, if you would. I mean, is it an expensive material to use? Is it practical, efficient? So on?
Sure. Well, Dyneema is it's a space age yarn. It literally comes from the aerospace industry, and it's a high tensile strength filament that we use as a reinforcing grid in our high tenacity base fabric, which is a 210 denier nylon. And where we are looking to achieve the ultimate tear strength at the minimal weight, that's where we use that fabric. It is about 3 to 4 times more expensive than our other materials, so there is a cost for that. With other materials, we're able to prioritize abrasion resistance and accept a slightly higher weight. For our double ripstop fabric, we prioritize tear strength and a lower weight. So there are trade-offs that we make between tear strength, weight, and price across each of the material selections.
And the materials, presumably, where are they sourced from? Do they have to travel very far in the world, or do they go from the US to your manufacturing base, or are they actually sourced to the manufacturing base?
We source all of our materials as close as possible to where they're going to be manufactured. All of our backpack materials are produced either in Taiwan or Korea, and currently the majority of our pack production is done in Vietnam. So we rely mainly on water transport, which is, as far as transportation goes, the most efficient, both from a cost and from a minimizing the environmental impact of the actual transit.
Yeah. And we're definitely aware of Golite's intentions on that score. So what pack would you like to sort of just briefly talk about now from a design aspect or a functionality?
Well, since we started with the Dyneema material, let's start with the Jam 2, which is the sort of the purest expression of the Golite principles in a backpack. It's the core of our line. If I were to describe only one pack, it would be the Jam, and it features a full body of the Dyneema grid stop material with upgrades for this season. We've enhanced the comfort of the back panel with a 10 millimeter aerospacer mesh that adds minimal weight but really improves airflow and the moisture management of the back panel, as well as just providing additional cushioning. We also have we've added pockets on the hip belt, which has been extended and has been lightly padded, as opposed to just being a dual layer of fabric, which in the past we really relied on the cradling shape of the hip belt. Now we've added a little bit of foam to that to protect the hip from the contents of the quick access pockets on the hip wings.
So these upgrades, as it were, for 2009, have these come from user feedback, or is it sort of a design element that you're bringing to it?
Yeah, no, all of these changes were directly requested either by individual users or by a string of retail buyer requests. And what we've learned so far in our preseason presentations is that most people are very pleasantly surprised at how minimal a weight increase we've incurred for the significant enhancement in both convenience with the hip belt pockets and comfort with the padding enhancements on the back and the hip wings.
I suppose the other side of it is that you have to take into account the consumer has changing expectations every year, don't they? They as you say, they want the minimum weight aspect to be kept a sort of fairly high priority, but there's a change sometimes in trends of wanting that little bit more comfort, or expectations of hip belt pockets, for example, I know is very, very popular in the UK, primarily because that's once you've had a rucksack that's got it, you really miss it on everything else.
Right. Yeah, the features that we really prioritize each season come from questioning everything. That relates to materials as well. So while we've added additional features, we've gone through in places that people wouldn't necessarily notice or wouldn't necessarily be obvious to them. We've selected new materials that perform even better from a weight and durability perspective, and employed them so that it has offset some of the weight gain from those other features too. So it's a series of trade-offs.
The design element of particularly something like the Jam 2 now, you've obviously kept to the sort of original roll-top enclosure and so on. How do you feel about the pack itself, and how do the customers relate to it as a sort of a design object, you know?
It speaks to the mentality, the Golite mentality of, I don't need all of the bells and whistles and all of the gadgets that some of the other folks that I see on the trail have. So I don't want to say it's a badge, but if somebody does ask about the unique appearance of the Jam, there's certainly a good story to tell.
Right, moving up to the second pack you got here, which is the 2009 version of the Quest. Again, just if we can just talk aesthetically for a few moments about the actual concept and feel to the pack.
The Quest is a more traditionally designed rucksack, top load, top lid, with a large front pocket, and both on the front of the pack and the back, where the suspension is also looking more traditional, with a more of a contour, molded foam, and a more substantial hip belt. It reaches out as more of a conventional pack, but then when you lift it, you realize just how lightweight it is. So the kind of the magic is on the inside with the framing and the material selection, but the feature set is much more familiar and potentially less of a transition from somebody who's decided to make the move into lightweight gear from more conventional gear.
Certainly, I know from my own experience, it's been a very, very popular pack these last 2 years, and I can see it continuing that way for exactly those reasons. But if I could just ask you very, very quickly then, the material selection that you chose for the majority of the pack, just tell me a bit about that, because obviously it's not Dyneema, and I think when that first came out it gave people a bit of a surprise.
Right. The main body fabric is it's called Velocity, and it's a proprietary weave of 210 denier high tenacity nylon that has a smoother face to it, which really enhances the abrasion resistance. So while the Dyneema has a tensile strength advantage over Velocity, this is actually a much more abrasion resistant material than the Dyneema reinforcement would provide.
Okay, and then any alteration to actually the pack? What, you've actually got it right in front of you?
We've modified a couple of things for the Quest this year. Instead of the watertight zippers without a rain flap, we've gone with a standard zip and rain flaps. This is something that we learned from long-term, 5,000-mile use on packs, that the zippers were the weakest link in the whole construction, and so we looked to enhance that. Other than that, a lot of fine-tuning of the fit, just so that we fit a broader range of people more comfortably, and just more ergonomic and lighter weight buckles that also are stronger, things like that. All of the features have been just tweaked and fine-tuned to improve them, but maintain all of the functionality that people have really appreciated over these last couple of seasons.
Well, certainly, as I say, it's been a very popular pack, and I guess you expect it to continue so. Has the response to it here in Friedrichshafen been good?
It's been very good. With these updates, both aesthetically and functionally, people are just very, very pleased with the changes that we've made. Because, again, most of them came directly from user and retailer requests.
So, Coup, what would you take in your rucksack that, without fail, every trip that's not Golite?
I take a number of things that are wonderful products that aren't Golite. My single favorite, I'd have to say, is Hydropel lubricant. There's 3 lubricants I use with some frequency on different parts of my body, but the Hydropel is what I use on my feet. It's 30% silicone, and the silicone acts as a sealant as well as a wonderful lubricant. And so by putting a small amount, 2 ounces will last me about 2 weeks, of daily application. I put a small amount on the soles of both feet at the start of the day, spread it all over, work it into my feet, work it all around the toes, and then I find that all day long I don't get blisters. I'm doing other good practices too. I'm carrying a light pack, I'm using walking sticks, I'm in pretty good shape, my feet get a lot of use, I'm using too thin socks, I'm using lightweight flexible shoes. All these things of course go together. But of all these things, Hydropel is certainly one of the more important. I find that when I'm in and out of rain, in and out of water, in and out of snow, often for 15 or 16 hours a day, usually for 30 miles or more in a day, occasionally upwards of 50 miles in a day, at the end of the day, there's no blister, there's not a hint of a blister. Feet feel fine, and really amazingly, the Hydropel is still there. I put some more on the next day, but I'm not really sure if I need to.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's available in the UK. I'll have to find that one out.
If it isn't, you should carry it.
Okay. So what else do you have in your pack?
Well, the other lubricants for starters, when you get into big miles, I find that it's really, really important to have other parts of the body lubricated too. And so I really like Sport Slick in certain areas. And for one very special place, nothing will do but Body Glide because its applicator device is the longest. I really like having a really good pair of trekking poles. So those aren't in the pack per se, they're in my hands.
Yeah.
I've had the best success with Compradels. Carbon Compradels are quite light but durable. Certainly Lecky and Black Diamond and a couple of other brands I've enjoyed too. But I find that Compradel has been taking the really lightweight carbon but durable the most seriously of late. And what I find is that light poles are disproportionately important. Like footwear, because it's at an extremity, every single stride you're rapidly accelerating a foot and then stopping it and then doing it all over again. The same exact thing's happening with your hand. So just as an ounce on your feet is worth 5 or 6 in your pack, so too I think an ounce in your hand is worth 5 or 6 in your back. And I find that so much terrain is fairly level. Really enjoy the ups, really enjoy the downs, but even on a day with a lot of vertical up and down, when you look back over it, you admit to yourself that quite a bit of that day was on fairly level ground. And I find that your standard trekking poles that always weigh upwards of a pound a pair, a good 500 to 550 grams for a pair, I can't on level ground easily keep pace with my feet with the poles, so that I'm not poling every step, I'm poling every other step.
Yeah.
And of course that's better than not poling at all in certain circumstances. But the whole idea of four-wheel drive is that all four wheels are going at the same time, and that's how it works best. And on rugged terrain, that's very helpful for obvious reasons. But on easy terrain, it's very helpful too, in that I'm doing 20% of the work with my hands, decreasing the work that I'm doing with my feet and my legs to about 80. And this is one of the things that really makes it easier, working together with the Hydropel and the other elements to go far and be very comfortable. Also, you don't come out of the woods looking like a hiker, you look more like a rower or a wrestler, which, I'm good for dates for life, but she likes it better that way. And once you get south of about 400 grams for the pair, I find that it's very natural and very easy for my poles to be keeping pace with my feet, no problem. And that's how I like to do it. So a few ounces difference in the hands really makes a big difference.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that one before, but you're probably right. Thinking on level ground, I can't keep pace with my feet. Absolutely. Yeah. Interesting, that.
Yeah. I also really like getting my socks right. I almost always use, on trips with fairly long days, I'll use the thinnest pair of right socks, WRIGHT. They make an integrated, very light polyester Cool Max sock. It's integrated two thin socks together. If that didn't exist, then I would wear 2 thin pairs of socks separately. But it's so much simpler to have them integrated. And the friction that is dissipated between the 2 layers is friction that never gets to my feet. So this is a really useful thing. And because the layers are so thin, they don't hold a lot of dirt. And so I find, I'll use those for several hundred miles in really dusty conditions, or closer to 1,000 in more forgiving conditions. And for just a few pounds a pair, they're hard to beat. Other things I like, in certain conditions when I have to take a bit of sunscreen, I love the Swiss brand. What is it? Dermatone. I've been using Dermatone for many years. It was recommended to my wife Kim and I when we climbed Denali back in '97, and we put it on in our tent every morning before we set foot outside. There's 24 hours of daylight. We climbed in June, and by putting it on before we went outside and making sure to get it everywhere that was exposed, obviously not too many areas, just the sometimes hands and always parts of the face. When we had come off the mountain, we'd been on for 18 days, and we didn't have a hint of a tan, let alone a hint of a burn. When you see almost everybody else come off of Denali, they all have the raccoon look with the white eyes from goggles and from glacier glasses, and everything else is essentially burnt. And so people didn't even believe that we'd been on the mountain, let alone that we climbed the mountain, until we showed them our pictures. And also we would open our mouths and they'd see that our tongues and the roofs of our mouths and our gums were all burned, but nothing on the outside. So, and all that without feeling greasy or uncomfortable in any way. I'd still rather not have it on than have it on, but if you have to put it on, this is really amazing stuff that doesn't get in the way. So I like Dermatone.
Well, sounds great. Any other little hints and tips of favourite items?
I love Aquamira water treatment. It's just about 60 grams for the whole kit. Treats 120 liters at full strength, which is good, obviously, for quite a few days. I find that there are many conditions where the water looks like, you can see the source. You can see that it's fine. You know that you don't have to treat it at all, but I do. But I don't treat it full strength. And then that stretches it way beyond the 120 liters. And also, it's the treatment of the water is a function of contact time times the concentration of the treatment that's put in. And so, a good third of my water on a typical trip, I'll be treating at the end of the day and having in camp and starting the day with it. Well, the contact time with that's going to be 6, 7, 8, sometimes 9 hours. So there I just put in the tiniest bit, and again, this stretches it. So effectively for 60 grams, I'm getting a few hundred liters of water and at pretty low cost. So I really like Aquamira, and that's replacing, a good 3, 4, sometimes 500 grams worth of filter system that I would have taken otherwise.
Yeah, sounds great. Any last tips? Any other hidden away in any corners of your pack?
I might. Yeah, well, one last piece that really makes a big difference is there's only 2 things I was issued by the military that I continue to use in a really lightweight hiking kit. One is an Esbit stove, invented by the German Army way back, and finally by the time that I got to be in ROTC, Americans finally gave up trying to better it and just adopted it. And when I do use a stove, which is not usually, but on trips in the early spring and the late fall, where it is not so cold that I have to be melting a lot of water, in which case I'm firing up not just a MSR XGK, but multiple MSR XGKs at once, then this is the stove that I like to use. Because then I'm only hiking 11 or 12 hours a day. I'm awake for 3 or 4 or 5 hours with the sun down. Sometimes I like to hike at night, but often enough I'd rather just have a big huge meal of pasta and lots of different things in it. And then the Esbit stove really comes into its own because it's just a few ounces. It's totally indestructible. The fire cubes are just 15 grams each, and I get a good whole meal out of it. In about 10 minutes, I've boiled my water. In the last 3 or 4 minutes, gets the roaring boil over the pasta, and then just cap it off. In the next 10 minutes, it just sits there. Pasta's ready. The other piece that I still have from Army days that I just love is the boonie hat. Way back in the late 50s, the early 60s, the American Special Forces got a real good visual and panache out of having dashing berets. But as soon as they actually went out into the field, they put the berets away and they brought the boonie hats out.
So what's a boonie hat? Yeah,
it's a big floppy hat with a wide brim. It also has a little band around the crown of the head where you can insert camouflage. I don't do that anymore. But to have the big hat with a good amount of room in it, which is cooling, big brass eyelets on both sides, a pair of them that lets a good amount of air through, and then just the right amount of width to the brim. It's quite large and effectively covers the neck area and all the way down the chin, the nose, the ears, everything on you. The only time it doesn't give you full coverage, the sun is so low in the sky that it's not really an issue at all. I put the boonie hat on, and everything is just great, except the pictures. Nobody back on staff, and certainly my wife Kim, don't really like the pictures, but I don't care. And it's interesting that when I look at some of the other people who are pushing the edge in different directions in lightweight hiking, some that come to mind, Glenn Van Pesky, Ryan Jordan, they all have cool hats with big brims, whether they're Tillys or anything else. They're all variants on this basic theme. And so in a world full of people that are running around with 20, 30, 40 grams of hats, I'm quite okay with 100, 110 grams of a big floppy hat.
That's interesting. I think Bob would like that because no matter what, he always has at least one hat, if not 2 or 3 with him. He's got a bit of a thing. I tease him mercifully about it, but that's really nice to hear that you hold on to something you've had for a while and take with you. Almost, it sounds like it's sentimental. Almost, you need to take it with you.
Yeah. Well, but it's not just sentimental. The few times I leave it behind, I find that I'm sorry. This spring, for instance, I was on the Appalachian Trail down in Georgia, and I've always thought of the Appalachian Trail as the Green Tunnel that I used to hike when I lived in the East. But in April and late March in Georgia, the leaves aren't really out yet, and so even though the forest is thick, the sun was coming down, and I had left my boonie hat in Colorado, and consequently, I had to pull my hood up every single day, all day. And of course, that worked for the most part. Didn't give me the coverage on the front of my face that I'd want. But it has nowhere near the ventilation capability that just throwing a big floppy brimmed hat on. The only other thing I just want to mention is, as always, we talk gear, and it's easy to get excited about it when you manufacture it, and you design it, and you live it and breathe it. But I always want to, keep coming back and remembering that the first 2 letters in Golite are G-O. It's go, and go is, if anything, the more important of the 2 syllables. So get the light kit together. Don't obsess about it too much, and make sure to take plenty of time to get out and really enjoy the outdoors. There'll be plenty of time to come back another weekend and get the kit even lighter, but then go again.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast, and thanks also to Coup and Andy for taking a few moments away from their busy schedule at the show. And that brings the 6-part series from Friedrichshafen to a close. I hope you've enjoyed the mixed and varied content, and we've explained more about the background to various products and manufacturers. There's plenty more coming on a whole range of outdoors topics from the Outdoor Station, so please make sure you keep an eye out for more podcasts. Or you can subscribe to the RSS feed in iTunes and never miss out. Details can be found on the Outdoor Station website. And so, until next time, folks, we hope you've enjoyed the series. Do drop us an email to info@theoutdoorstation.co.uk with any feedback. Take care and enjoy the good weather.
This independent programme is produced and hosted by theoutdoorstation.co.uk.